Hello and welcome to the Spellsword build for Darktide. This has just come out with the latest update and the reworks to the talent trees, and particularly Psyker. I had been using this build for a while, just for my own, shall we say, personal amusements. But with the Bound by Duty, I think that's the name of the update, changes to Psyker, this build went from fun but dumb to fun and kinda ridiculous and also dumb. So, without any further ado, let's just jump right into this build. So, this is a weird build that revolves heavily around Assail, between Assail and primarily the Blaze Force Greatsword. Now, we'll get into why I chose the specific blessings and perks later. We'll first handle the talents, because I think that's the best place to get started. So, just going down the list, metal. You're going to be doing critical hits quite a lot with this build. You are relying on crits, and it just helps a ton. That movement speed can add up and just do some wonderful things to help you get the hell out of dodge when you need it. And with this build, I mean, you are wading directly into melee and bum rushing pretty much every single enemy, so the more speed the better, and the more toughness the better. Likewise with Warp Expenditure, you will be primarily going for weak spot kills, and I'll explain why later, but melee weak spots are the bread and butter of this build, so you need that if you want to make it work. Quietude. You will be making use of Scryer's Gaze, which will be constantly generating toughness. You'll be constantly losing toughness as well, not losing toughness, constantly generating peril, and therefore toughness, and you'll also be constantly losing peril. And therefore also generating toughness. So it creates this wonderful cycle of just constantly producing toughness, which you need that. This build revolves around just using your toughness as an aggressive shield that allows you to get away with things you have no right to get away with. Thank you so much, Fat Shark, for making these changes. It is wonderful, and it is also delightfully ridiculous. Likewise, Battle Meditation. This build relies very heavily on being in Scryer's Gaze for as long as possible, and you just keep swinging your melee as much as you possibly can. And to that end, you're constantly quelling peril with this. Helps a ton. Just in general, I really like this little talent. It's wonderful. Perfect timing. I mean, like I said before, we're doing crits. That's how the build works now. I guess we do in crits now. So, this build primarily uses Assail, and you may be thinking, hey, why don't we use quick shards then, so you can be sharding people all the time? And, well, it's just not that helpful. Like, there are very few circumstances I have personally encountered where I have been out of shards and been with my back against the wall. More often than not, they regenerate more than fast enough, and since this is sort of a hybrid shard melee build, you're just not burning through shards often or fast enough to really need this talent. But if you want to play a more shard heavy playstyle, I'm not going to stop you, but dealer's choice as to which talents to nix to make it work, as you wish. Now, ethereal shards, on the other hand, absolutely essential. Do not take this off. It makes shards ridiculous and pairs exceptionally well with a upcoming talent, which I will get into. But first things first. Malefic Momentum. You are switching frequently between melee and your shards, so let me just show you real quick. Attack, attack, attack. See, and I've got stacks galore, and then I can use that as well to attack with shards. Now I've got stacks. You're just constantly switching off on which attacks you're making and which on each. So you're getting a lot of value out of Malefic Momentum. So, wonderful talent. I love it. You just flat damage boost to both melee and shards because you're constantly switching back and forth between them. Lightning Speed requires no introduction, and I don't think I need to explain why this is good. Speed is key, especially for a melee build. Crack of Bone, also very valuable. Again, we're going to be using Scryer's Gaze for this build, and if you're constantly quelling peril with the help of your melee, I have been at 30 stacks of Scryer's Gaze and still lingering in like 1 to 0% peril just by purely swinging my sword as fast as humanly possible and keeping peril down. It is a wonderful thing to stay in high Scryer's Gaze, but we'll get into the exact strategy of how to use this build after we get to the talents first. But this is where the first key talent comes into play, Warp Splitting. 100% cleave. is awesome. And again, you are using Scryer's Gaze, so you will have that 10 seconds of 100% peril. Super valuable as well, but there's more to it than just that. Credit to the YouTuber Tanner Lindberg for this, but he found that shards are affected by warp splitting. So I think I'll just try to do a quick example here. Build up some peril first. There we go. And your shards just go nuts. I'll throw just one shard for juxtaposition. There we go. Four of them dead. Just 4 of them dead. And so obviously this is not exactly the most refined demonstration here, but in my experience, shards will typically hit about 3 to 4 targets normally, whereas when you are at high peril, you're hitting typically 5 to 6 per shard, and when you're going nuts with shards, that adds up. You can do some ridiculous stuff, but we'll get into that with the strategy of the build. This perk is wonderful. I really like it. Seer's Presence, just cooldown reduction. It's nice, helps your teammates a ton. If you got a teammate who's taking it, you can grab Kinetic Presence or Prescience. I think Prescience is also pretty helpful here because, you know, critical chance. But overall, just in terms of sheer bang for your buck, I really like Seer's Presence. So that's what I like to personally run with. Then we got Psychonetic's Aura. I mean, just look at the thing. Do I need to explain further? Empathic Evasion. This one is also essential for keeping you alive with this build, because how else are you going to Unga Bunga directly into melee range if you just get immediately filled with bullets and or lasers? Not a great look, not very healthy. 0 out of 10, would not recommend getting filled with bullets. And Empathic Evasion is how you pull that off, because you are frequently critting in melee, so as you're just mowing your way through hordes, as this build is wont to do, you're critting pretty often, and so a lot of the times gunners are just not an issue for you, which is really helpful, because before the update, you didn't have a lot of toughness to go with. They could shred you pretty quick, so it was not a fun time. Still could do a lot of work with this build, but with all the toughness now, plus Empathic Evasion, it's a good time. It's a wonderful time, even. Just a Dream. You are going to be frequently at low peril, and you have so many ways to passively get rid of peril just by attacking in melee that you can actually afford to translate some of the damage into peril as well and still stay completely on top of it with Scryer's Gaze without overcharging too quickly. So just overall great for survivability, and this build does need that survivability because otherwise you die. One with the warp, just again, survivability. There you have it. Then we get to the pièce de résistance, Scryer's Gaze. Now, warp speed, super valuable for Scryer's Gaze. Naturally, you are in melee, and you need to get close and hit people aggressively. Precognition, with your sword, you are, you know, just constantly going for melee weak spot hits. And so that's, you know, it helps a ton with that. I hope that was demonstrative, but so, yeah, the Scryer's Gaze, super essential for the damage, and helps you survive as you charge into melee with things that you have no right charging into melee with. Kinetic Deflection, as well, super valuable, helps you defend yourself very well when the chips are down. I have used this talent in conjunction with this build to successfully hold out against a demon host. Now, I couldn't really counterattack because I am not that skilled, but that's what teammates are for. So, yeah, have fun with that. And then the final part to the build that really brings it all together is Disrupt Destiny. With so I don't think Disrupt Destiny requires too much explanation here. It's more or less what it says on the tin and more or less works how you think it does. But very importantly, in the whole perfectionism versus lingering influence, perfectionism is just better. Like, yes, you will lose stacks a lot faster than normal, than you would normally with lingering influence. But the thing is, every time you have stacks above 15, you are getting massive value out of this. And also, it takes a while. If you make it all the way up to 25, it takes you quite a while to get back down to 15, let alone to run out to 0. I very rarely fall back to 15 once I'm at 25 stacks, unless I die or teammates take forever to get into elevators, as they are wont to do. Now, this build seems all hunky-dory, you know, seems interesting, but here's where it gets interesting in particular, is with the weapons. So, we'll get to the Blaze Force Greatsword. Now, there's probably some super highfalutin YouTuber who's mastered Darktide and has read through the source code could tell me why you need to increase or mess with the numbers for damage, finesse, cleave, defense, and warp resistance and all that, but I am an uncultured swine, so talk to an expert who actually knows what they're doing, and they'll tell you what you should do with that. But the perks and the blessings come together to make this build even more ridiculous. So, you want to be critting as much as possible for empathic evasion and just all the various toughness points and movement speed. So, Riposte, mwah, chef's kiss, works so wonderfully to make that happen with this build. But what makes this work so well with the build is Murderous Tranquility. You quell peril and proc this so much more often, and when you're running Scryer's Gaze, you can just keep swinging and never stop. And it's awesome. So you just swing, throw the shard, swing, throw shard, swing, throw shard. And you're constantly switching back and forth, and you never really have to quell because the sword is doing such a good job helping you vent your peril. Quell your peril. The Vermintide is getting to me. So you can do all of that, and it keeps you at low peril to get all the way up to 30 stacks of Scryer's Gaze before it finally overtops. And then, when you get to that that period, that lovely little time where you have those 10 seconds of infinite, you can just spam all the shards. And everything will die. Everything. So, you spend your entire time with Scryer's Gaze building up, striking, just mowing down everything in your path, having a lovely time. And as soon as you reach full Scryer's Gaze, boom, it's sharding time. I need to cut that out of this video. Anyway, so, that brings us to the one weakness of this build. And that is those fuckers over there. You, and you. But there are ways around them. It's just, if you happen to have full charge with the sword, you can just do an energy slash, and more often than not, that'll help you a ton. But if you don't have that set up, well, shards aren't very helpful. And yes, you can go for your heavy attacks. Also, very importantly, I do strongly recommend you take the Mark 6 on the Greatsword, specifically for the attack combo. The heavy attack being a consistent stab or downswing, so useful. That said, you know, there are times where you have a boatload of enemies that you simply cannot deal with in an orderly fashion when they are currently trying to make your guts very disorderly, and also a lot smellier. Thank you, Nurgle. And thus cometh the plan B, with a little bit of the good old-fashioned Void Blast Force Staff. I strongly recommend rending Shockwave for brittleness. Like, at the end of the day, the big armored Ogrins are going to be an issue for you with this build, but with Shockwave, you can really deal with them, and as always, this is ultimately a co-op game. Your teammates are there to cover your weaknesses, unless you are one of those absolute mad lads who tries to solo the game, and if you are one of those, you have my undying respect. But also, what are you doing here? You know more than I do. Like, I, this mere mortal, cannot teach a god. But, alas, thank you for being here anyway. That said, Void Blast Force Staff, very useful as a backup weapon to deal with armored enemies who would otherwise really piss on your parade. But honestly, you can grab pretty much any weapon you want in the secondary weapon slot, because more often than not, your teammates will just deal with it. And so to that end, I've actually been able to get a lot of use out of this build to build up mastery in ranged weapons that I just cannot be bothered with or don't have a good build for yet, but would like to level up mastery in. I just slap them in my secondary weapon slot and proceed to not use them except like once in the entire match, because I'm just... the sword and the shards kind of just handle everything else that Darktide can throw at you right now. Quick aside, because I forgot to mention something, for your curios, I generally recommend just grabbing toughness curios. I have a wound here just because RN Jesus does not smile upon me. But I strongly recommend toughness curios, because all of your talents revolve around building your toughness, and just generally speaking, you're trying to tank with toughness as much as you possibly can, just long enough to close into melee with whatever is currently trying to eat you. The gameplay of this build is simultaneously straightforward and deliciously nuanced, depending on how much you just want to get into it. But put it at its most simple, the job is just activate Scryer's Gaze and proceed to mow through hordes to your heart's content. And you will be killing at such a rate, and especially thanks to all the talents I've gone over, all working in conjunction, you are just building very little peril despite being in Scryer's Gaze. I'm at 30 stacks already, and just continuing to wail on these guys. And you can throw in some shards here and there, just, you know, a little bit there and there. And then eventually you will get to 100% because it's inevitable, at which point just unleash devastation. And right back to it. And then if you're ever overwhelmed, you can just do a good old-fashioned voila. So all sorts of toys and tricks in your arsenal at a moment's notice that all synergize really well and each kind of backs up the other. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do the full shard spam every single time, but, I mean, it's sometimes fun to just go nuts with shards, and especially when you have those 10 seconds of Scryer's Gaze, you can do so without any fear whatsoever, and it's just a blast. This build might not be the most optimal thing that ever touched this game, but by God, it's fun.